Overclassifying UAP as a National Security Crisis. An audio article by Nick Madrid. The United States Air Force has been withholding intelligence on unidentified aerial phenomena, UAP, from government spy agencies and Congress for decades. Try to imagine a branch of the United States military, specifically the Air Force, withholding critical UAP intelligence from not only interagency government departments and congressional oversight but likely the President of the United States. That's the gist of a powerful and compelling article from Christopher Mellon last week in the debrief titled, "Why is the Air Force AOL on the UAP issue?" He's the former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Intelligence and a man who's in the know. Mellon went into a great amount of specific detail in educating Congress on a myriad of areas where they may find critical data to further their efforts. He followed up his written tour de force with an interview with Micah Hanks, and made deliberate Air Force stonewalling sound like a distinct possibility. We have Navy fighter pilots reporting UAP from the same training range where Air Force F-22s are operating, which have more powerful and capable radar operating systems, so how could they not be seeing what the Navy pilots are seeing? The answer is they were, but they were afraid to report that information because of some kind of retribution or effect on their careers, or the Air Force is squirreling that away and not sharing it." End quote. Recently, Christopher Mellon and Lou Elizondo recounted a story on the Somewhere in the Skies podcast involving an Air Force officer who was trying to provide UAP intelligence to the director of the Unidentified Aerial Phenomenon Task Force UAPTF and was shut down by his chain of command. Then on a recent episode of Need to Know with Coulthard and Zabel, Air Force vs. Navy, Australian investigative journalist Ross Coulthard and his co-host Bryce Zabel, a former investigative journalist himself, jumped on Mellon's contention that of the 144 UAP cases cited in the UAP preliminary report of June 25, 2021, all had almost certainly come from naval intelligence, without participation from the Air Force. Zabel, feeling that at times the complexity of Mellon's article was simply overwhelming, wrote a clarifying article between the Wild Blue Yonder and the Deep Blue Sea, on the trail of the Saucers publication, and focused on the growing differences between how the Air Force and the Navy are dealing with UAP. Additionally, personnel from the Air Force's Office of Special Investigation AFOSI have been discouraging other government personnel from sharing UAP-related intelligence on the United States government's classified computer network. And if that's not enough, Elizondo was recently interviewed by Jimmy Church's Fade to Black and said, the Air Force wanted to shut down their Sensitive Compartmented Information Facility SCIF, which is essentially a secure conference room used to discuss classified UAP information, because they felt the United States government didn't have the finances to support its function. America's overclassification crisis. In a letter to Congress from the Director of National Intelligence, DNI, Avril Haines said that overclassification of government secrets both undermines national security by blocking the intelligence community's ability to share critical information and erodes the basic trust that our citizens have in their government. Information is typically classified to protect the sources and methods, how it was collected, and who collects it, but not everything needs to be classified. Information the public needs to know can be presented in an unclassified format to keep Americans well informed. At least that's what Lou Elizondo is making the case for and said. What I would propose is that whoever leads this effort moving forward really needs to remember that there is a very easy way. We do it all the time with the United Nations. We do it all the time with the American People's State of Union Address, where you take highly classified data and you provide that information to the American people in an unclassified manner. End quote. The United States government's 9/11 Commission report concluded that its inability to share critical information between government agencies contributed to the intelligence failure associated with the horrific events of 9/11. Here's Christopher Mellon again. We didn't win the Cold War because we were better at keeping secrets. We won the Cold War because we were better at making decisions and moving the information faster. End quote. There is an obvious pattern of reluctance within intelligence-oriented government agencies, and specifically within the Air Force, to share information associated with UAP. Information is power in trade within a bureaucracy. The lesson here is that unimaginable catastrophes occur when imperative intelligence is not shared among intergovernmental agencies and congressional lawmakers. The leaking of classified information regarding UAP should be a serious concern for the United States government and could damage national security for all democracies concerned. During the Somewhere in the Skies interview, both Elizondo and Mellon indicated they oppose leaks of any kind and have serious concerns. When asked by Chrissy Newton of the debrief if Congress continued to be stonewalled by the Air Force, would other departments step forward on UAP-related issues and leaking become pervasive? Elizondo responded first and said, "When people lose faith and confidence in the system, and they feel like they've got nowhere to go, then that's when you start seeing the leaks, when you start seeing people getting frustrated because the system isn't working. And again, I don't necessarily condone that, but that seems to be kind of the trend. So if the Department of Defense, the intelligence community, doesn't want any more leaks, then my suggestion would be for them to be more transparent, be as transparent as possible on this topic." End quote. Mellon then supplemented Elizondo's comments and said, "There is an almost unprecedented deficit of trust in the American government right now, generally writ large, on any topic. Then, when we talk about the Air Force in this issue, if anything, it's only worse, the skepticism is pervasive. So it's an opportunity for the Air Force to try to set the record straight and turn things around. And thus far, unfortunately, they've been doing just the opposite. They've been circling the wagons, not sharing information, even with other components of the Defense Department, even with the Deputy Secretary's task force." End quote. However, Mellon went on to say that he was very optimistic and believes Congress can now ask important questions and get answers that should be forthcoming in 2022. However, in the battle for UAP transparency that's been waged for more than 70 years, the USG has substantiated 3 declassified UAP videos, provided by Mellon and Elizondo in 2017. Issued the preliminary UAP report establishing that UAP is real, yet unexplainable in 2021, and ratified legislation in the NDAA this year to address UAP-related questions. While historic, it is unknown how much information Congress will secure from Pentagon intelligence sources nor what will be declassified and released to the public. Congress's first annual UAP report is due on October 31, 2022. For the record, in one voice among many notables who lived and died in pursuit of government transparency, Dr. James E. McDonald spent his life advocating for a government dialogue regarding UFOs. In 1962, Dr. McDonald said during a news interview that he believed that the UFO problem is the most important international problem in the world today, and when asked why, he replied, "What we have in the UFO problem is a very strange situation. For 20 years plus, essentially similar phenomena have been reported all over the world, and in large numbers in the US. Officials are ignoring them and the Air Force is ignoring them, while there's been a steady increase in reliable reports from people in all walks of life. They are seeing these objects that are not products of our technology, they're not meteorological or astrological phenomena, hovering at low altitude with increasing numbers in urban areas, and collectively we don't know what's going on. It's an extremely unwise situation, no matter how you view it. To believe that the world is under reconnaissance from a possible extraterrestrial intelligence and to go on with our petty ways doesn't seem to be a wise situation." End quote. In 1969, investigations conducted by the U.S. Air Force under Project Blue Book concluded that it found no evidence of any UFO that was extraterrestrial or that threatened national security. The Air Force announced Project Blue Book's termination on December 17, 1969. Ongoing efforts to silence those still seeking answers were continued by the United States government, in conjunction with the CIA, and proceeded to create and perpetuate a stigma around the non-existent phenomenon. American citizens who witnessed objects they did not want to see, and sought answers, would face ridicule and persecution, which served as a warning to others in the decades that followed. These unfortunate souls included not only private citizens, but also military personnel who reported UAP incursions at ICBM nuclear weapon facilities and commercial pilots concerned about mid-air collisions. However, after 53 years from the conclusion of Project Blue Book, on June 25, 2021, the United States government released the ONI-UAP-TF preliminary UAP report. The report revealed that UAP were real, yet unexplainable, and citing these objects were not of U.S. origin, but may be adversarial technology requiring further investigation. The preliminary report was now very concerned about mid-air collisions associated with military and private aviation. The NDAA legislation sought to address medical or biological effects suffered by those who came within close proximity to unidentified aerial phenomena. The NDA also seeks information associated with the production, transportation, and storage of nuclear weapons or components and efforts to capture or exploit discovered unidentified aerial phenomena. Shortly after the preliminary UAP report was published, the New York Times article entitled, "Pentagon Forms a Group to Examine Unexplained Aerial Sightings," reported. Government officials said privately that there was no evidence of Russian or Chinese advanced technology in use, much less space-traveling aliens, in the information collected, end quote. However, more interestingly, Lou Elizondo recently appeared on Fade to Black and commented on the origins of UAP and said, "I can't comment on any technology we might have that's advanced. What I can simply say is there's enough compelling evidence and information to suggest that what we are witnessing is not our technology or foreign adversarial," end quote. The UAP observed by United States naval pilots today shares the same configurations and gravity-defying maneuvers as witnessed by the United States military more than 65 years ago. The United States and the former Soviet Union could simply not have had this technology in the 1950s. Christopher Mellon provided an observation indicating that any Washington press corps who believe the United States government cannot keep secrets for decades are simply wrong. The reality is, the United States government has kept the UAP secret for 7 decades and has become quite adept at invasive obscuration. The mainstream media will not fully engage this subject matter without definitive evidence that UAP is not adversarial technology. This topic doesn't belong under the purview of any one organization or institution or government. It belongs to all of us, and to be courageous enough to challenge the system. Quoted by Lou Elizondo. There have been very few investigative journalists through the years who have been willing to go into the weeds on unidentified aerial phenomena. However, recently, Ross Coulthart went all in informing his Australian audience on this is why that he had reliable inside sources, and in a bold statement said, "The public is being manipulated by disinformation folk in US intelligence. I am in no doubt whatsoever there has been a very clever government cover-up," end quote. However, the problem remains, no one can, or will, provide conclusive evidence for UAP that would unleash mainstream media to question the United States government. Moreover, Congress's uncertainty, and historic inability to obtain information from government intelligence agencies could, unfortunately, push UAP back into obscurity for decades to come. The genie may be out of the bottle, but he's still locked in the closest. Originally published on Medium, and can also be found on themadridpapers.com. Please like and subscribe and visit us at themadridpapers.com, and thanks for listening.